it's Mad. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. Today's video is a little bit different than what I've been doing the past few weeks. As you know, I have been going through grief. I lost somebody very close to me, and it's been very difficult to say the least. And I'm going to try my best in this video to kind of keep myself together and keep myself from crying and getting super emotional, because I do want this video to be helpful and educational. So next to me I have a stack of books. I wanted to share with you the books that I read in January of 2023. Of course, a little trigger warning. There are going to be discussions of grief, loss, tragedy, death, mental health in this video. So if that's something that you are not in a place to hear about right now, feel free to click out. I will see you in a future video, hopefully. But if this is something that you're interested in hearing about in the books that I've been reading this month, then definitely keep watching. A lot of these books have been super helpful in my experience with grief. Maybe some of these will be helpful for you as well. I figured that this year I would just do monthly recaps of what I'm reading. I get asked all the time what I am reading. Every time I bust out my book in school or at work or something, somebody asks me what I'm reading. And I also get asked for book recommendations all the time. So I figured this would be a good way for me to kind of refer people to the things I like to read, and hopefully it will give you guys some good suggestions of things you could read this year. I definitely read a lot this month. Going through grief is really heavy, and my brain sometimes just needs to be occupied and busy, but leaving my house and going out feels like too much. So reading is a really great way for me to cope with the day-to-day torment that goes on in my mind. Let's just get into it. This book I actually just finished. This is called Darkness Visible, A Memoir of Madness. It's by William Styron. This was, I would say, a 3.5 out of 5. I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. It was definitely a quick read, only 84 pages. Also super easy to follow. So if you're looking for something digestible, this is a great read. Basically, the author talks about his experience with major depression and how it almost caused him to end his life and what that was like. And he had this experience back in 1985, and he talks a lot about how depression and just mental illness was viewed during that time, and how getting help wasn't really a straightforward, easy process. Granted, there's still so much further that we could come with that today. That's a whole topic for another day. But he talks about stigma and difficulty dealing with depression in a time where it's not understood and it's shameful to ask for help for something like this. I actually learned a lot about Camus, because Camus is one of my favorite philosophers and existential authors. He talks about Camus a lot, which is quite interesting. Yeah, overall, I thought it was good. I thought it gave me a very interesting perspective on what it's like to deal with depression at such a massive scale. And this just gave me a better understanding at what, my friends who deal with depression might be going through. So if you're looking for a deeper perspective on depression, I think that this is a easy, quick, and insightful read. Next book is called Passages, The Mystery of Death, Finding the Meaning in Life. This is a collection of poems, philosophy, and just writings about death and meaning. This was edited by Thomas Fuller and Garth Fuller. It's a collection, so there's tons of different writers in this book. This was a quick read. I read this in maybe an hour. It definitely touches on death through the perspective of many different cultures, religions, experiences, and how different people across the world understand and explore death. This is, once again, super digestible poetry. There's a lot of very short poems in here. I did find a lot of pieces in here really insightful. One of my absolute favorite poems about death is from Henry Scott Holland, and I discovered it when I read this book. So I'm gonna actually read you this poem. All is well. Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped into the next room. I am I and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed, at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Pray, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be the household word it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without a trace of shadow on it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just round the corner. All is well. Sorry, this poem makes me emotional every single time. It's so beautiful. If I hated everything else in this book but got to hear that particular piece, it was worth it. I think it's a solid 4 out of 5. It's digestible. There's a lot in here, and I think there's something for everyone in this type of book. You can kind of skip around. You can find things that interest you. It's something you can always refer back to, which is something I love about poetry books. Next is a poetry book from my favorite poet. This is Francis Delario's If and When We Wake, with artwork by Scott Hutchinson. I think I've read this probably 10 times. This examines how crucial it is to find meaning in life after experiencing the death of somebody close to you, and shines so much light on how important these small moments in life are, especially when you experience something so deeply painful as death of a loved one. I also love the use of Scott's artwork in this. The writing in here is, once again, easy to digest, easy to connect with if you've experienced death. I think it reminds you that even in the worst of times, in the darkest moments, there are little things to find beauty in, and it's those things that kind of push you forward, even if it sucks at the same time. I just absolutely love Delario's poetry. So if you read anything from him, I think that this is great. He's got an amazing book called Joy, which is a little bit more joyful and bright. But if you are interested in the topic of death and grief, this is an amazing read. The next read was The Year of Magical Thinking from Joan Didion. I have talked about this on my Instagram. I've talked about it in my YouTube videos. I cannot get enough of this book. This was a recommendation from a friend, and I was hesitant. I'm always hesitant when it comes to books about grief because I am afraid that it's going to hurt me in some way or not be helpful for my processing. There's really no words to describe it. I mean, this is a 5-star read through and through. This is considered a modern classic, so I'm sure a lot of readers out there have read this book, but if you haven't, it's her telling her story about the loss of her husband and what that made her day-to-day life look like. The way that she writes helps to deliver the story to the reader in an even more impactful way. The story on its own is incredibly impactful, but the way that she tells the story of what she went through is really where grieving people can connect, because the way that she writes, the way that she refers back to quotes that she heard or experiences that she had, and the way that she integrates those things into the pages, it's so parallel to how I think as a grieving person. This just made me feel seen in a completely different way, and I just absolutely loved it. This next read is called This Beauty. It's by philosopher Nick Riggle. It's the philosophy of being alive, and I really enjoyed this. This is definitely one of those philosophy books that's a lot more digestible, a lot more accessible, and it's a great starting point for anyone who's interested in existentialism and aesthetics. I absolutely loved this. I was so drawn in by the description on the back. We did not consent to life, yet here we are existing in it, and what are we supposed to do with that? This really explores that question of why do we stick around? What is it that can motivate us to continue living a life, this random life that we've been given with these random circumstances, and how can we make it at the least enjoyable slightly, and how can we make it beautiful? It talks about a lot of euphemisms we use, you only live once, or things like that. I was a really big fan of this book, and I think if you're looking to get into some easier philosophy reads, this is a fantastic place to start. Okay, next book. Martha Cooley's Guesswork, A Reckoning with Loss. To be honest with you, I personally didn't connect with this one. Not to say it's not a good read, but for me, it just didn't do what I was hoping it would do. It's a lot of different memoir type stories about small moments in her life that connected back to a bigger theme of grief and death, and how we kind of continue to choose to live. But for me, it was a little bit too metaphorical, a little bit too drawn out for me right now with where I'm at in my mental health and in my own grief. I kind of need books that are really, really straightforward, and this was not. I think the style of the writing just didn't connect with me. It was okay. This, on the other hand, this is right up there with The Year of Magical Thinking, an easy 5 out of 5. This is from Barbara Asher, Ghosting, A Widow's Voyage Out. This book was fantastic. I really would love to go get some of her other books just because I absolutely loved her style of writing. This book is about her grief with her husband's death and the illness he had leading up to his death, and how she navigated losing the most important person in her life, how she was able to love again in the future. This was so beautiful. The way she wrote was profoundly touching, and she really tries to connect with the reader that love, above all else, is stronger than the pain of grief, and how to kind of recognize that in your brain. Though I'm not at a place where I agree, I feel like my grief is all encompassing. I can also understand that maybe there will come a point where I can recognize love over the pain that I feel. In the worst parts of grief and the worst parts of losing someone, especially in a kind of drawn out, slow, painful process, how that can affect our day to day and how I can still have a life. Okay, sorry if my camera moved. My memory card was full. This just taught me so much about what the future of my grief could look like and how that can manifest differently. This was incredible. Lastly, this is Question Everything from Peter Catapano and Simon Critchley. Simon Critchley is one of my favorite living philosophers. He's wrote a few very interesting books, in my opinion. His writing style is a lot more digestible and accessible, and that's what I like about this. This is a collection from The Stone, which was a New York Times essay series where you could submit philosophical essays to the New York Times and then people would just get to read them. A bunch of different authors about different topics that just have to do with questioning everything. And I thought this was so interesting. It's one of those books where you can skip around. You don't need to read it in order because each essay is its own individual topic. Some of them are literally like 3-page essays. It's something quick where you could just kind of read one essay before bed or read one essay on the train and not have to commit a ton of time to sitting down and reading. So I really like books like this that are kind of broken up in that way. All right, everyone, that was my January reading list. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that maybe you'll read some of these books, and if you do or if you have, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys read this month, and I'm hoping to do one of these series every month, so let me know if that's something you're interested in by giving this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that whatever you're going through, if you're experiencing tragedy, grief, loss, mental health issues, whatever you're going through, just know that there is a place here for you and that we are trying to build a community around mental health and these bigger topics that are hard to talk about. If you need someone, I am here. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I hope to see you guys in my next video. I love you all. We'll talk soon. Bye.